They say that the biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's occurred. I've seen that be a problem with communication. Have you? Hi, my name is Susie Price, and I'm here today to share with you a segment around communication and specifically about resolving conflict. I'm here because my colleague Ed Oakley is giving me this opportunity to create this and share this information with you, and I really appreciate Ed's support and the programs that he develops. So thank you, Ed, for this opportunity. What are we going to do today? We're going to cover 3 keys around resolving conflict. There are 3 key essential things that must be in place to resolve conflict. And you'll receive additional links and materials around each one of those keys that you can access to go deeper into each one of those areas. We'll also go through a 6-step process that you can use immediately when you're holding a conflict resolution meeting. So we've got a lot to cover, so let's get started, get right away going with a question for you. How good are you at resolving conflict? How quickly do you handle and manage miscommunications and misunderstandings when they come up? Is that one of your strengths, or is that something that is challenging for you to handle? Or are you somewhere in between? What would your team members say about you when there's conflict on the team? How quickly are you able to help facilitate a resolution, or do you? What would your peers say about how you handle conflict between your colleagues at work? Are you effective, or could you use some strengthening in that area? What about your boss? What would your boss say about your skill set? Whatever your level of skill is, it is something that you can improve upon, and it's really important that you do. We all need to continue to work on this because research tells us 60 to 80% of all problems in organizations stem from strained relationships. That results in most managers spending 1 to 2 days every week trying to deal with conflict. So if we can get ahead of this and we can get really good at quickly managing miscommunications and misunderstandings in a way that is effective, we're going to have less problems, and we're going to be able to spend more time in other areas and not so much time in trying to handle all the conflict that can result when it isn't handled. What often happens with conflict is we do one of 3 things, and none of these are very effective. The first is we're too easy. We say, oh, I don't want to cause a ruckus. I'll just let it stand. So we say yes when we mean no, and we end up being frustrated. That creates future problems in relationships and in organizations. The other approach is on the other side of the scale, and that is to be too harsh. So we get angry and assertive, and we mow people down, and we tell them how it's going to be, and we leave a bunch of dead bodies in the hallway. Not good, and not a great way at all to handle conflict. The third approach is something we've all done. I've been guilty of it. I will ignore the situation, just hoping that maybe if I just turn my head the other way, it'll go away. But it almost never goes away, right? It just gets bigger. So we need a process for doing a better job, and there is another choice. And I want to share it with you by sharing a story about 2 people who were in conflict. It was a very extreme situation. They were able to use these steps to resolve their own conflict. So we had 2 executives that were running a company, Ben and Kevin. Ben was an outsider that was brought in to become CEO and president of this technology company. Kevin was the founder of the company who was demoted out of those 2 roles. Kevin was supposed to report to Ben. So lots of tension right there just in that situation. In addition, Ben, very crisp, very formal, very much in his style, very direct and assertive. He graduated from the finest colleges and Harvard, Carnegie Mellon. Kevin, the exact opposite, very casual, laid back, he prided himself on graduating from the School of Hard Knocks. And so not only did they have a tough situation, they had different values, they had different styles, they had different backgrounds. A situation ripe for conflict. And they did everything from, they were really easy with each other for a while, which meant that they weren't very honest with their true opinions, which didn't help them make much progress. Then they did the opposite. They got in a lot of arguments and almost got in a fist fight during one meeting, so the tension rose, and they were at a standstill when they were just ignoring each other. It wasn't working, but it was better than the other two options, and that's where they stayed stuck for a while. That was until a potential investor showed up on their doorstep and was ready to invest big money in the company, but only if several options or several things were managed according to what the investor wanted. And one of those things was that the two of them figure out how to work together. So with their backs up against the wall, even though they had a tough situation, they decided to try to figure out how to get along. How could they resolve this conflict? And they did. Here are the 3 keys that they were able to use, and you can use them too, to help your team members and help yourself resolve conflict. The first key is to take personal responsibility for your actions, and that is not blaming or judging anybody else. The second thing we need to do that will really help us is to really understand our communication style, understand the strengths and the blind spots that could cause tension in relationships, and specifically with the person we're having conflict with. And the third step is follow a conflict resolution process. There's a reason that people study conflict resolution, and there are processes out there that you can follow. And one that I endorse and like to follow is, it involves 3 steps. The first step, if you're going to hold a conflict resolution meeting with a peer or with team members, people who work for you, what I want you to do is to have whoever's in conflict to complete a pre-meeting worksheet. And in the pre-meeting worksheet, it just allows them to think a little bit about what they want to discuss in the meeting so that they come prepared. They're going to think about situations that have bothered them and the specifics around them. They're going to think about what they want the other person to start, stop, or continue. So there's a worksheet. They'll complete that. And then before you start the meeting, you want to set up guidelines for how they agree to communicate in the meeting. I call it the code of conduct. So it just sets up a framework for how we're going to communicate. So we're going to do pre-meeting work. We're going to have whoever's in conflict agree to meeting guidelines. And then we're going to go through a 6-step conflict resolution process. The people in conflict, there are 2 roles. There's a talker and a listener. The talker will go first, and guess what the talker's going to do? Talk. The talker is going to pick one situation, the one that bothered them the most, or that person the most, and talk about it. So the talker is going to talk about what happened, the situation, the details, how it impacted that person, what that person would have liked to see differently. And the talker is going to talk, and the listener is going to do what? I know you know it. They're going to listen. So the listener can't respond, can't defend. All the listener can do is listen and seek to understand. So the listener can ask questions if the listener doesn't understand, but that's it. So talker talks, that's step 1. Listener listens, and then listener in step 2 is going to restate what the listener heard the talker say. The tension when this meeting starts is usually very high. By the time you get to the second step where the listener is feeding back what he or she heard the talker say, the resistance has dropped dramatically every single time. It's the power of reducing resistance by listening. So you don't want to underestimate the power of listening and making sure that exchange happens. So once the listener has shared what he or she heard, the talker is going to correct any misperceptions or things that weren't clearly understood. So they're going to continue to dialogue until they get clear on how the talker saw the situation and how it impacted them. At this point, the resistance has pretty much blown through, and then the two are able to begin talking about facts and agreeing to those. They can then move to step 4, which is solutions. They can then come to some agreement on their next steps and what they're going to do. And then before you know it, they have talked through a situation and come up with action items. 6 steps to resolving conflict in a meeting. Follow them and they really work. Once you've gone through the 6 steps, what happens is you switch roles. The talker becomes the listener and the listener becomes the talker, and you go through it again. So we've covered a lot. I went really fast because I only have 10 minutes or so to share. But resolving conflict is crucial. Max Lucchese has a great quote. It says, conflict is inevitable. Combat is optional. That's it in a nutshell. Resolving conflict is important. It is a key, crucial leadership skill. So I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank Ed Oakley and his team for providing wonderful materials to help leaders all around the world. And I'm going to sign off. This is Susie Price saying thank you and good day to you.